Hunting and fishing and trapping are not part of my get from point A to point B plan. That's why I use emergency rations. My resupply caches have emergency rations in them. But that doesn't mean that at any point in the near future, I might not be in a situation where I want to be able to hunt. I want to be able to trap. I want to be able to fish. I just don't want to carry that on my back until I need those. So another cache that you can set up is a hunting, fishing, and trapping cache. And you put that in a location where it's actually going to be useful. So when you're in your planning process and you're looking to put one of those together, then that is what you should consider. I like to keep in mind, I like to keep a couple of different things. You need to think of actively hunting, actively fishing, and passively trapping. Obviously the passive means are going to be working for you while you're doing other priorities. And then active or opportunistic hunting and fishing should be something that you equip and prepare yourself for as well. So for my particular system, I use my own kind of personal micro fishing and trapping kit, as well as a M6 takedown series. This is the M6 rifle. This is basically a survival rifle that is very simple to use. Pop this pin out really quick, put it together. But this has actually got two different barrels on it, and you can get them in different calibers. All of the rifle calibers are almost always coupled with the 410 shotgun. So it's a really useful rifle. And it has ammo storage back here. This particular one is chambered for 22 long rifle and of course 410 shotgun underneath. Really easy to switch back and forth between calibers. But these are kind of lightweight survival rifles that are very effective, very accurate. So this particular one is the M6 Takedown series from TPS Arms, and this one is really nice. It's a really good addition to your kit as far as actively hunting or opportunistic hunting, as well as dispatching any animal that you might catch in a live trap. Really handy to have, so that's something to consider for your own kit. And of course that comes with a choke tool that's pretty unique in that not only is it a choke tool for the 410 on your shotgun, but it also accepts basically any driver bit, so you can use a number of things. You could add a Phillips head, a flat head, and a hex head, a couple of other bits in there, package that all together and keep it with you, and it's, you can use that wrench for that as well. So really cool thing. So that's kind of for your opportunistic and your active hunting. But then most of the time, because I have so much other things to do, I'm going to be relying on passive means of doing that. So when you think of passive land-based and passive water-based, and it really depends on what you're going for. My kit kind of starts with a couple of large steel rat traps. These are also effective for small game like squirrels. And speaking of squirrels, they have a couple of holes in those that you can actually use to put these right up against a tree. And of course this is a post-event kind of thing. This isn't something you do for everyday trapping. It's probably not legal, probably not any more legal than primitive traps are, so keep that in mind. But just, this is examples of ways you can procure food. But because these can be nailed up against a tree, I throw a handful of galvanized roofing nails in there just to use for that, to make that technique a little easier. You could also tie or wire them up if you wanted. But I've got my steel rat traps, and of course everything in the wild loves peanut butter. So I just carry a pack of this particular one's maple almond butter, so I might actually eat this later and put some regular peanut butter in here. But this is what you use for bait for this type of trap, all right? And you can use it for a number of other things as well. So that's kind of my first go-to. And then of course, using snares. You all probably know that I like the Thompson survival snare kits. I carry 3 of those in here. But the survival snare kit comes with a large snare, a small snare, and some wire to actually wire those up to an anchor. And I carry 3 total of those kits in this micro trapping kit, because 2 is 1 and 1 is none. 10 or more is dinner for sure. You never want to rely on 1 to 2 traps to provide sustenance for you and your family. You want to put out at least 10 traps. So I try to carry enough traps pre-made that I can quickly get out there wherever I'm at. And that includes 3 survival snare kits. I also carry a little bit of additional snare wire. This is some heavy gauge snare wire that I get from Wazoo Survival Gear. It comes in these small tubes, really packable. You can put these in caches, you can put them everywhere. put them in your micro trapping kit. You've got some additional snare wire. I think each one of these tubes is 15 feet. I usually figure 3 to 5 feet per snare, so I can get, you know, a handful of snares per tube in there. But those are just additional. And that's kind of my passive land-based. And then when I start looking at, you know, my passive water-based, which are fish traps basically, then you need kind of fishing tackle to go with that. But that starts with, for me, it starts with these fishing yo-yos. I think these are one of the most handy water-based traps that are on the market today. And I think that they're small, lightweight, and affordable, and they're really easy to put inside a kit. And you can set these up in a series along a bank or any waterway. Had that coming to me. That's why you carry extra, because you lose one. So those are really easy to set. You put your fishing tackle on the end of it. Whenever the animal or the fish actually takes the bait, it releases that trigger, and it holds tension on him in the water to keep that hook from coming out until you come and retrieve the fish. So setting up a handful of these is really quick, and they're really, really effective. And of course, you need to put some sort of tackle on those. So my fishing tackle kind of fits inside of an Altoids tin. The stuff that I find particularly useful for the methods that I'm using. One of the most effective means that I'm going to use to procure fish passively is a retrievable trot line or a bank line. So I keep additional bank line in there. This is about 100 feet of number 36 and about 50 feet of, I believe this one's number 12. It's a thinner bank line. So when I'm making trot lines or making bank lines is this, trot lines use both. And then I need to kind of rig those. So this particular bag, I've got some large hooks, because when I'm setting a trot line or a bank line, I'm kind of fishing usually for catfish. So I want kind of heavier duty, larger hooks for that, and I want some large swivels so that as the fish are getting trapped on that trot line or that bank line, then it can swivel rather than bind up and really get tangled. So swivels, and I've got the largest weight I can get in there. Keep in mind that in a lot of currents this isn't going to be heavy enough, but it gives you a good place to start. But that's all in that kit. If I wanted to set a bank or a trot line, then that's what I need out of there. Then for kind of medium-sized fish and smaller fish, I've got some snelled hooks that I can rig directly to my fishing yo-yos, and additional swivels, some smaller swivels, and a variety of split shot sinkers that I can use. And that gets everything set up, you know, so that the types of fishing I plan to do, that's what I put in these kits. You know, you can get fishing kits on the market, but they're not typically as useful as you might think. You just got to look at all the components and find out if you know how to use all of that stuff, and that's true for everything. I carry a small spool that already has some 25-pound test fishing line on it, and this is useful as a hand reel if I'm actively fishing. But I also carry some braided fishing line, and this is also in tubes. I get this from Wazoo as well, the same place that I get the snare wire, the additional snare wire. This is some additional fishing line that fits really well inside the tin. And then of course, depending on the type of fishing you're doing, a lightweight float is always handy, even though you can produce these in the wild. It's one less thing you have to worry about. And then kind of a variety of lures. It's not always easy to find bait when you're out there, so sometimes you don't need to. Fish are attracted to things that look different in the water. So you may just need a handful, a variety of colors, different shapes. That may be all you need. A small spoon is all you really need to catch attention sometimes, and you can catch fish on that, but that gives you some lure choices. If you're actually successful in catching fish, another thing that I like to keep in my micro fishing and trapping kit is some heavy duty foil. This foil I get from Wazoo Survival Gear. It's extremely thick foil, and it's actually, I've used it to make an improvised container with. But the reason I carry this is when I'm expecting to catch fish, especially the smaller panfish, I can stew that in a pot, of course, and make a soup. But this gives me some other options for cooking that fish. So that is a good addition. And you know, I could also tear the corner off of this because it's shiny, and I could make an improvised lure with that. But you know, I've got enough other lure options in here that I'm less worried about using for that. But you could, for sure. And then last but not least, another kind of opportunistic and possibly active means you could use for procuring food is a simple frog or a fish spear. All right, something that's really durable, that's not going to break on you, as you're using it. I like this particular one. It's nice and flat, but it is a hardened steel. It's hardened at the tip and it's sharp, and it's extremely sharp. But this is designed to sort of offset. It's bendable enough still to where you can offset it and then lash that to a pole and use that for fish or frogs, because life kind of begins and ends there on the water's edge, right? Your land-based animals still go to the water's edge because that's their water resource, and the animals that are in the water obviously come up to the edge because they can feed up there on bugs, and it's just a really great place to find food. So the water's edge is where it's at, and I think the best way to really actively or opportunistically hunt and fish is right there on the water's edge. So I think it's one of the most important things in this microfishing and trapping kit as far as active and opportunistic hunting and fishing, and it can be used for both. So that's a really good piece of kit that I think should be included in there. And again, this is not something I keep inside my bug out bag because it's not something I plan on doing while moving from point A to point B. I'm relying on emergency rations, but when I get to an area that this may be useful, then I may be there for a while, then I want this in a cache, or I want this, of course, in my alternate bug-in location, because once I get there, I'm not going to subsist on emergency rations forever. I've got food supplies there, but I'm always going to be trying to supplement with animals and fish that I'm getting in the moment, in that day, so that I don't have to tap into my food storage, and then my food storage is going to last that much longer. And all this micro fishing and trapping kit fits inside this Badger Claw big bore kit bag. This particular one is green. He makes those specifically for me, but those will be available. Everything fits inside there. It's a wax canvas, really durable, really well made. And that, along with the takedown rifle, and you've got a pretty good combination for really keeping you and your family fed in the long run.